All right, so today is August 15th, 2019. I'm here in Everly, Iowa with my grandparents, Jack and Louise Clark. And how are you guys doing today?
Okay.
Fine. A little nervous maybe.
So yeah, just had the idea to sit down today and just have a conversation with Grandma and Grandpa about their lives and about life in general. So I guess we can dive right in. I'm curious, what comes to mind when you guys think about your childhood? What are some of the first things that come to mind when you think about childhood?
You want me to talk first or him?
Sure, either way.
Okay.
Either way.
Basically, I had a pretty happy childhood. We didn't get to do all the things that the kids do these days, but I came from a big family, and we pretty much had fun Christmases and did some fun things.
I guess I would say ditto. Yeah, I had a good childhood. As we got older, as we got to be teenagers, basically they figured a farm kid should work, and so there was a lot of things we did on the farm. And then as we got a little older, we hired out working, which was typical of all farm kids back then.
What age did you start working on the farm?
Oh, odds and ends. At 10, 12, you gathered eggs and did simple things like that. We started driving tractor younger than you'd think. It was probably 14, 15 we were driving tractor back then, and which wouldn't be considered good now, but that's kind of what everybody did.
Grandma, you said you didn't have all the things that kids have nowadays. What are some of the things that come to mind that kids have now that you didn't have?
Oh, we hardly ever got to go to a movie or anything where you were going to spend much money. Of course, there wasn't restaurants, so you never went out to eat. Just so many. You didn't have the amount of clothes that the kids do these days. Everything was about saving money and helping around with a big garden, canning, lots of that kind of type of things.
See, the folks came through the Depression. In fact, it was the Depression when I was young, and so they were really concerned about, and even it really lasted even when they became financially independent. I think some of that stayed with them all their life, actually, just because it was a very tough time for them.
And do you remember when I don't know exactly when movies became a thing. Were those a thing from the earliest time you remember?
We went to movies when we were dating. They were popular, and that was what we did a lot of when we were dating. So before then, I don't remember if it was some black and white and some color. I'm not sure. I don't remember for sure. But
I remember getting to go to one movie. My dad took all of us to the movie, The Bells of St. Mary's. And that's the only movie I can remember.
I don't remember ever going until I got big enough to be dating.
Until I was older, in high school.
What are you guys' birthdays? When were you born exactly?
December 1st of 31.
December 1st.
And February 28th of 35.
So I'm 87, almost 88.
84.
So the world's changed a lot in that time.
Yeah, it's hard to describe.
Yeah. I'm curious, maybe you can think about some specific areas. Like, how was it when you think about what food was like when you were kids, like going to the grocery store, the type of food you were eating? What was that like at that time?
Oh, they just didn't have any of the foods that we have today. No pizza or anything like that. And my mom made everything from scratch, baked her own bread, and you did a lot of canning, and that depended upon everything they canned, what you ate in the wintertime. Just no boughten cookies or anything like that. I think there were cookies there, but there wasn't the variety of things there is today.
Well, see, they didn't have refrigeration back then, and so when they butchered a hog, by then they cured the ham and the bacon and stuff, and that was one thing that was definitely. I remember very well before when we got our first refrigerator. Why my mother didn't see why we should have that thing. She's got it ridiculous now.
Mm.
That was probably one of the biggest changes when we got electricity to be able to have a refrigerator. And
well, people just ate what they had, and I ate my first pasta when I was in France. Yeah, I was 22 years old.
Wow.
So, but we didn't feel it wasn't available, and we just didn't have it, so we didn't feel neglected. We ate good. We certainly had plenty of good food when we were growing up. We certainly weren't deprived of good food, that's for sure.
What was your favorite thing to eat when you were a kid?
I think farm raised fried chicken was something that's pretty hard to beat, really.
What about you, Gwen?
yeah, I'd agree with that, but also my mom made the best apple dumplings in the world, and I can still taste those.
We'd just go out and catch a rooster and kill him and pick the feathers off of him, and she'd cook him. Yeah, that's the way they did. That's about as fresh as you can get.
Yeah. It doesn't get much fresher. You said when you got electricity, how old were you when you got electricity?
Well, actually, I don't remember them getting not having electricity, but I can remember that they didn't have a refrigerator, and that if they had lunch meat or cheese that they bought for a special occasion, maybe cooking for men or something, they put it down in a well. So in a pail in a well way down in the water, so it was good, keep it good and cold. So I just was probably too young to remember when the electricity, we actually got that. He remembers.
Well,
electricity.
I was probably 10 or something like that when we got television. I remember distinctly an uncle owned a grain elevator in Carroll, so he was one of the more well-to-do men around Carroll, I guess, and they had their first television I ever saw. And of course, me being a teenager, I thought that was the dumbest thing you ever saw. It was only about an 8-inch square screen, and you could hardly see it. And it was a few years after that before we got one at home, and it was black and white, and the reception was terrible. It was just all snow.
Interesting. What other amenities do we kind of take for granted now that weren't really, that you didn't really have in the house as kids?
Oh my, the indoor plumbing.
Oh.
No bathrooms. We're having to run outside even in the wintertime to go to the bathroom. No running water. You heated your water. I can remember my mother in the wash house where her machine was, heating the water in the cook stove. In fact, I had to do that after we were married for a while. We didn't have hot water. And then you wash, your clothes with the old washing machine with the wringer. You didn't have these washing machines like we have now. No dryers. You hung it outside to freeze dry in the wintertime or else in the house.
Well, and then,
Just
of course, no air conditioning, obviously.
Of course, that'd be another.
No heating, no air conditioning.
And phones, the party line with 8 or so people on it, so that when you called, everybody was listening to you. When we got a private line, we thought we died and went to heaven.
So the neighbors were listening?
Oh,
yes.
Oh,
You had all the neighbors and everybody around you on your line.
One of the kind of funny things, they'd kind of make a joke. They knew everybody was listening, so if they'd call, they'd say, "Hang on, ladies, I'll try again." That was true. Even when we were farming, that was a number of years after
we had
started
that.
farming.
Oh, yes. Yeah, in our generation since we've been married. But that's kind of how people got news. We didn't, people didn't go as much as they do now. They pretty much so stayed home and
got all the latest neighborhood gossip.
Yeah. How else did you guys get news and information early on in your lives?
Basically, there probably wasn't any other than word of mouth.
well, we had
We had radio,
we had
yeah.
radio and newspaper. Did we get a newspaper when we first got married? I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I think we always
But
got
we always got
the
a
Des Moines
newspa- yeah,
Register.
we always
and
got-
we had a radio. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was little and you didn't have any TV or anything, our big thing was on Saturday night. We all sat on the floor and listened to the radio to
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Fibber McGee and Molly, and there was was it Amos and Andy?
Amos and Andy was another
There
one.
was a few comedies, and we'd all, Mom and Dad, we'd all sit there. This was Saturday night entertainment to listen to this.
I know that sounds strange, but it's true.
What was that program like? What did they do on it?
They
It's
were
hard to- I can't
comedians, like, weren't they? Or were they kind of comedians,
Yeah.
would you say? Or what would you say?
Was that the same one where they had the Undertaker that was called It Is I, Digby Odell, the Friendly Undertaker? Is that the same show, or was that a
Well,
different
I think
one?
that might have been a different
But
one.
anyway, people who didn't have any other entertainment, and their family did it, our family did it, so it was probably a lot of families who did just exactly that. And of course, I got to be a teenager. As soon as I had a car, then I of course went uptown and started dating, started running around with a car on Saturday nights.
What was your first car?
That I owned, or that the folks
Or
owned?
drove that you drove when you were
Oh,
that
my
age?
first drove was about a '35 Chevy. My dad owned that, and then he got a. Well, I hate to say it, but I wrecked it. I wrecked that one, and he bought a 1940 Ford then, and it was used. And then I drove it till till I went to the Army, and then well, no, I drove it till my brother was in Korea, and he had a Plymouth. I drove it then till I went to the Army, and then I had a motorcycle. I had a couple of motorcycles. I did most of my riding on motorcycles. And then our first new car, I bought a new car when I got out of the Army, a '55 Ford.
How did you wreck the Chevy?
I never could tell Dad the whole story on that. There was a bunch of, I'll tell you what, it was a dumb thing. I had a date, and a bunch of guys were following me. And so I dished the lights thinking I would turn and they wouldn't know. And it was so pitch dark, and I reached for the lights and I couldn't find it, and I ran in a ditch and wrecked the thing. It was an old car. It wasn't worth too much, and so I didn't do a lot of damage. It was bad enough they didn't fix it up anyway. So that wasn't one of my better things I did.
We all have stumbling blocks as teenagers. So. What do you guys remember about your parents when you think about your mom and dad?
They were good parents. My dad had a short temper. I guess I kind of inherited some of that from him, but he was a good guy.
Yeah, my folks they were real hard-working people. My mom did everything to help outdoors besides raising her kids.
Well, there was 12 kids in that
Yeah,
family.
12 kids.
Yeah, she helped pick corn, slop the hogs, as they used to call it years ago, and yeah, she was a real hard worker, and Dad was too. You know, they did very well to raise 12 kids and have enough to keep them in their old age. And
Yeah, what was it like having 11 brothers and sisters?
well, I tell you, when you have that big of a family, it's almost more like two different families, in the sense that the older ones were out working at a job or something, while I was closer to the younger ones. because it's such a large family. Not that we weren't all together a lot of the times or anything like that, but
Something that would seem almost impossible this day and age. She stayed home 1 year to help her mother when her brother was born, and skipped a year of school, and then started the following years.
Wow.
So, and then you had a classmate that did that.
yeah,
also?
I had a classmate. My best friend did the same thing because her mom was not feeling well, and that was kind of basically when my mom wasn't feeling real well, and she needed to stay home, and I decided I could do that too, and then we started the next year together.
How old were you when you did that?
I don't know for sure. Let's see.
It wasn't between
Probably would have been, normally you graduate from 8th grade and what, about 13 or 14, so it was just 1 year, so I suppose I started when I was 15 maybe. Yeah, I graduated because I graduated, I believe I think I was graduating when I was 18, but my birthday was in February, the end of February. I think is how it was.
How many kids were in your family, Grandpa?
There were 6. Yeah.
6 kids.
Yeah, there was. I was the second oldest,
Hmm.
and back then, the older ones wound up. Once you got big enough, well, you wound up being in the field and working on the farm most of the time. But I had a good childhood. I can't complain about it.
Is there anything you remember your parents doing that would seem strange nowadays because they were just raised in a different time?
But,
Oh, I think about everything.
I couldn't think of anything. I hear you.
Well, the way they did things, everything, I think about when they butchered hogs or whatever, and then they rendered the lard, and then Mom would take, I don't know, it was something from the Kremlings or whatever she called it. I suppose that was a German term or something. And then she'd make her own soap for washing. And I mean,
they used to pick the down off of a goose and use it for the
and make their own
pillows.
feathers. Yeah, for make their own pillows.
Oh, wow.
Yes. You
Well,
kept
then
some ducks around, and then every, I don't know, once a year or so.
Well, then you bought feed sacks, and they deliberately had prints on them. That's how they got the girls' clothes.
When I was a little girl, that's right. Mom made our dresses from feed sacks.
Wow.
And
You're learning something today.
they were printed with prints on them, really some of them quite pretty. And so I could pick out which ones I want, and for school, for starting to school. That was when I was in the early grades. Because then when I got maybe by 3rd grade, I can remember Mom taking all 3 of us girls to town at one time, and we all got school dresses and stuff, and at least got 2 or 3 maybe new dresses. That still was a biggie. And got some new school clothes, so I suppose after that.
You're getting more of an earful than you expected.
And you can stop anytime or tell us to stop if you're.
Oh no, this is perfect. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, we're so much more wasteful nowadays, and we just take for granted, throw stuff away constantly.
That's right, because they did not throw a thing away in those days. They used everything.
Do any more examples come to mind of things that your parents did?
Well, let's see.
I can't think of anything offhand. I'm sure there's plenty of them, but I just can't think of anything offhand. You put me in a spot here.
What about like bathing and stuff? Nowadays we all hot shower once a day.
You had a tub in the bedroom, and I think we only took a bath once a week, as I remember. And they just carried the water to it and put it in it, and we bathed. I think you guys probably did the same thing.
Well, see, I don't remember that. I'm just a little bit younger than you are, but I can remember my folks had a little shower put up out in that wash house, and the water would come down, and there was a drain beneath. So in the spring and summer and fall, if it wasn't too cold, we could shower out there. it was like a bucket of water. You had that much water, you know. But that's the part I can remember. I can't remember, but I just don't remember it from showering with a tub or that.
They got when I was overseas, why they put in indoor plumbing at our home place. Yeah.
Well, actually, when we moved to Everly, we did not have indoor plumbing in that house, in the old house out on the farm. We didn't have until I think it was around. Steve was probably about 3 years old when his folks owned the place, and they decided they would put a bathroom in and where the pantry was, and for us.
So the shower was just a single bucket of cold water?
Yeah, well, they heated it a little bit, see.
Okay.
And I should tell you about stoves. Back then they had what they called a cook stove, and you either put cobs in it or you put wood in it to heat it up, and then if you were going to cook anything, you cooked it on top of the stove. But if you wanted to use the oven, they kind of had to estimate what temperature to get it when they baked anything, because you're just there's no way to tell. You're just putting cobs and wood in the stove, and that was also true without furnaces. How they heated the house, and we had that on the farm.
Well, also wasn't there a water cistern along with that stove?
There was what they called a reservoir.
Yeah, reservoir.
And they kept water in there, and by the stove being heated up, that water would heat up so it was warm.
And then you'd use the warm water.
Yes, and then they would give you a pail of warm water, and you could shower. But I think too, we probably only did that on Saturdays.
Yeah.
So the stove was not an exact science. It was
and talk about a cold house in the morning. And of course, no heat upstairs or anything. When you came down, you just wanted to stand close to that stove and get a little bit of heat.
The washing machines were run by a little gas engine with a V-belt to it, and you started, the engine was outside and it ran into the porch and where the washing machine ran. And we milked cows by hand back then, and then they had a cream separator, and you turned the crank and ran the cream separator, and you still remember about when you...
Yes, my job after school was to wash the separator. It was a great big long thing with, they call plates, with about 25 pieces. And I had to wash that sometimes I did it before school in the morning because they had to do it every night.
Then you sold the cream on Saturday night. That's when the family would go to town and buy groceries and bring eggs and cream to sell. And then the milk from that you gave to the hogs back then. That was real typical of...
Except that they first used some of the milk for their own.
Yeah.
So you didn't buy milk. And you also had cream, and they made their own butter. You sat in the corner with a churn that one churned until their arm was tired, and then the next one turned until you had butter. And the cream, my mom had a lot of whipping cream for on puddings and all that kind of stuff, because anything that they had, that's what they made use of.
Where did you sell the eggs and dairy when you went to town?
Well, I think they took them to a grocery store, didn't they?
Yeah, they were just the local people.
Yeah,
the
grocery
they were set up
store
for that. Yeah,
they
were set up for that. Farmers went to town on Saturday night and did that. That was just the thing you did. And sat around, visited and stuff. And then might have gone in and had a beer or something. I don't remember.
And whenever Mom came home with this big case, the eggs were in a big case, split with layers, what do they call it? You put the eggs in so they wouldn't break. But anyway, whenever she came home with that, she always checked to make sure there were no cockroaches in there, because that was the best, easiest way to bring cockroaches home from the grocery store. That still stands out in my mind.
Where exactly were you guys born?
I was born in Lake City.
Lake City, Iowa.
Were you born in the hospital? Do you know?
Yeah, I was born in
You were?
hospital.
I don't think I was. I think I was at Willie, Iowa, and I think I was born on the farm. I think so. I think my brother next to me and after me was the first one that was born in the hospital, I think.
Interesting.
Well, back then it wasn't unusual for farm kids not to go to high school. No, that it wasn't at all unusual for. My dad never wasn't a high school graduate.
Yeah, I suppose if you knew what you were going to do
Yeah.
to earn a living,
Yeah.
it's,
If I had one regret, probably major regret, probably when I got out of the Army, I could have gone with the GI Bill and gone to college. And at that time, not many farm kids did, and I had a chance to start farming, so I did, and I did fine farming, but I think college would have been a good thing too.
I'm trying to think what else wouldn't have been around back then. Do you remember the washing machine being around when from the earliest times, or were the clothes
Well,
being
they
hand
used
washed?
washboards, I know, at one time to wash their clothes. I just know that. I think probably from hearing my mother talk about that.
Well, the gas-powered washing machine is
But
what
they
I
had,
remember.
Yeah, they did have. My mom had that washing machine in the wash house. She called it, with a building right next to the house, and it had the wringer that you ran it through the wringer, to wring the water out of the clothes.
With a hand thing.
Yeah, with a hand thing. Where now, your machine just spins it out, and you're all ready to go. Throw it in the dryer, and it comes out beautiful. And ironing was no small thing. When you hung it out on the line to dry, and it was hard as a brick, and all that clothes, really. And when my mom had to iron, I remember this distinctly. Of course, she had to have this cook stove hot, because she would put that iron on that cook stove until it was hot, and then she'd iron with that until she had two. Then when that was getting cool, so it wouldn't iron, then she would exchange and take the other one off of the cook stove. She had, you know what I mean? Because she had to have, it had to be hot to get the press the wrinkles out. Especially like, good white shirts. You know how everybody people wore suits to picnics.
Oh yeah, that was.
Talk about
my
something
big
nobody
thing,
would
yeah.
do these days.
Yeah, whenever we had a picnic with my folks and my uncles and aunts and my grandpa and stuff, all the men had suits on on a Sunday for a picnic.
Wow. Dressing up for the occasion.
Yeah, and most men wore hats at that time. Well, in the farming, there's some hard work, but most of it's not physical heavy labor like back then. Everything was done the hard way. Tractors. My first tractors didn't have starters. You cranked them by hand, and I don't know why they didn't figure it out sooner. But to fill the tractors with fuel, they dumped it into a fire. They had maybe 100-gallon barrel that the serviceman came out and filled, and then they filled 5-gallon buckets and dumped it into the machines. I remember I worked for my uncle, and he had two good-sized John Deere tractors at that time. He was a big man, and he'd stand on the ground, and over his head he would dump a 5-gallon can of fuel oil into these tractors. And now, of course, everything's done. You got a big 1,000-gallon tank, and it's all done manually, or done with electrically, of course.
I suppose also dishwashers, microwaves.
Oh,
When
of
did
course,
those-
you didn't have anything. Who never heard of such a thing.
My mother won a microwave. I don't remember how that happened. And, well, that was when my brother was married and everything. I guess he'd gotten a divorce. And Mom said, well, I have no use for that thing, and she gave it to him.
When did dishwashers and microwaves start appearing? Do you guys remember? How old were you?
Well, I don't. I'm sure dishwashers were out there for a while, but you bought my first one for me when I was. I think I was pregnant with Brian.
Yeah, that was when we first.
Yeah, I believe so. Because the doctor told me to try to stay off of my feet more because I had varicose veins, and so Grandpa said he'd buy me a dishwasher, and then you sit down and elevate your legs while the dishwasher is running.
Did we have, when we built that new house on the farm, did we have a microwave right away then? I don't remember.
I don't think maybe we did right away.
See, that was in 75.
Are there any other stories you guys remember from childhood that come to mind, maybe involving your family, your brothers and sisters, that that just stand out as interesting memories?
I'm drawing the blank.
Well, weddings were always a fun thing. All of my brothers and sisters getting married. I was the youngest of 6 girls, and so I had 2 brothers older than I am. So those were always kind of fun. We thought exciting times because we got special food, or we got to have pop. That's something we didn't.
What kind of pop?
I can remember getting
Coke most of the time.
I'm sure they did. I can remember having orange pop though. So they must have had like some flavors like that.
What age were your brothers and sisters getting married?
Well, let's see. I don't know. They would have been they would have been my sisters, I think, would have been probably in their 20s for sure.
Early 20s.
Yeah, in their 20s. And my brother, I think, they would have been 20s. I don't think anybody that I know got married real young.
I was the first one. I was 24 when we got married, and my older brother, 3 years old, he got married within the same year, I think. He was.
Yeah, that's right.
He was 27 when he got married.
What do you remember about holidays growing up, like Christmas with family? What was that like?
Well, I always enjoyed that because we always got some gifts, not a lot, but we always got something, and lots of apples and oranges and nuts and special food. And Mom always made, of course, pie. You had to have pie, and turkey at Thanksgiving, and I don't remember, probably even had maybe fried chicken for dinner for all I know on Christmas, but
I basically remember, I don't remember when I was younger. I remember when I was probably teenager, we'd go down to my Grandpa Otto's. They had a nice home in Carroll, and they had a basement, and I remember they had boxing gloves, and so I remember we'd have boxing matches between I had an uncle that was 9 months younger than I. He went to the Army at the same time I did, and we used to box each other. And then him and I each bought motorcycles at the same time, and we rode motorcycles together. And then, my brother had a motorcycle too, and those I enjoyed those times.
I imagine your families going to church growing up.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Once a week, every Sunday.
Oh yeah, every Sunday, and I'm sure
And
if there's
any
any
holy days.
yes, or we used to have missions, and they went to all that kind of stuff. My mom she walked. A lot of times we were only a quarter of a mile from Willie, so she would walk up there when it was this couple of days they were cleaning church or something like that. She just walked, and we walked to school a lot too, of course, because we were close.
If anybody ever had a good mother-in-law, I had one. She was a good one. She really was.
How did you guys meet each other?
There was a little town of Arcadia that was about 12 miles west of Carroll, and it was a haven for young guys. The girls from Carroll would go out there a lot of times singly as a group, and you'd start dancing different ones and one thing or another. If you kind of hit it off, why you could go downstairs. They had a place where you could get a Coke and stuff, and you'd ask them if they'd take them home. And a lot of times, they'd let you take them home. You might ask them for a date, or you might not. At that time, you would never think of calling them later. I would have made the date then, or I wouldn't have made it. It's just the way it was, and that's how I happened to meet her. That she was with another guy at the time, as I remember it, but I stole him away. I don't think she was on a date with him, but she had been on the table with him anyway.
She was dancing with him.
Yeah, dancing with him, yeah. I always
was a
kid her
big
about
thing
that.
back then. Dancing was a big thing back then.
Well, yeah.
then. And
What you would do actually would meet them there, and then the Starline Ballroom at Carroll was where some of the bigger bands came and stuff. And as a date, you would take them to the Starline down east of Carroll. That was pretty typical, or a movie in Carroll.
Mm. What was your first date after you met each other?
What do you mean? What was our first?
What did you do for your first
Oh,
date?
what did we do?
I don't remember.
I don't know if I remember either.
It wasn't a memorable date.
I guess not.
We may have gone to a dance. I don't know.
I will tell you what would probably seem very boring compared to today, because it seems like the engagements are kind of a production. Back then, I got out of the Army on February 2nd, and her birthday was February 28th. I bought the diamond, and we went out on a date, and I asked her to marry me, and she said, "Yeah, that was it. We didn't do any production whatsoever."
No big photo shoot. Like
No.
At the Starline Ballroom in Carroll, they had the big bands like Guy Lombardo, which I'm sure you never heard of in your life, probably. Jan Garber and
yeah, those are big names. They were
wonderful.
Nationwide big names.
Yes, that was a biggie to get to go to something, one of those.
What kind of music was it?
Well, it was what they used to call new time and old time. I mean, you probably never heard of such a thing, but the old time was like with an accordion, with, whatever, and polkas and waltzes and the more of that kind of thing. And the new time was
Foxtrot,
what do they call it, or two-step or whatever. It was a different type of. And
see, rock and roll just came in with Elvis Presley later. Then
Interesting. And after you guys met and started dating, it wasn't long after that you, Grandpa, went overseas to go serve in the military.
Yeah.
So
I went in. Yeah, we started dating in the fall, and I went in February 2nd of 53.
what was it like saying goodbye at that time?
Well,
for that long?
It was pretty traumatic, I guess you'd say.
Well, you got to come home for.
Well, yeah.
While he was in basic, though, he got to come home some before he went overseas.
Yeah. See, I took 16-week infantry basic, and I rode after we got in. Well, I went to Fort Riley, Kansas, and then I met a guy from Atlantic that had a car out. He got a car out there, and then I'd ride my motorcycle down to Atlantic and leave it there, and then him and I would drive to Fort Riley, and then we'd come home on a weekend, which is crazy. We'd drive, that was a long drive. Back then, no interstates or anything, and stay up all night and everything else, and then drive back during the night and try to get there by morning on Monday morning without any sleep. But that's how we did it, and I don't know what I was going to say about it.
So we did until you went overseas. You got
I know what I was going to say. I said I took a 16-week infantry basic from February into the summer, and then after that, most of them went overseas, and they had a leadership basic training. They called it. It was another 8 weeks. So I stayed another. And in that time, the war got over, and so after I we got 30 days free vacation a year. Then I was sent overseas and I went to Germany.
Hmm. What was the longest you were apart without seeing each other?
Well, that would have probably been a year and a half.
Year and a
I
half.
suppose.
Year and a half.
Yeah.
So we wrote letters.
Yeah. Couldn't call each other, right? It was
Called
the one.
I called once, yeah.
But the connection was so terrible.
You couldn't hear anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't hear anything and
No.
had to wait in line or something to
Yeah,
call. And,
yeah.
Yeah. But you wrote letters and I feel like it would seem kind of crazy and romantic to a lot of people nowadays to wait that long for each other, just writing letters. And
To be honest about it, when I left, I really didn't expect her to wait that long. I mean, we kind of talked like we were going to, but I just figured she's a young teenage girl and I'm gone that long, but she did.
how old were you when he left, Grandma?
18,
Well,
weren't you?
Well, no, I would have probably been more like around 17, maybe. I think.
Wow. A woman who knew what she wanted.
Well, but I mean, not overseas, but I mean when he first went into the service. I think, I don't know for sure. Maybe 18, but anyway, in that somewhere. 17 or 18.
What are some of the things that jump to mind when you think about the time overseas, Grandpa?
It was kind of a coincidence, or maybe it happened because of that uncle that I went in the same day with. He had gone to Fort Leonard Wood, Kansas, and then he had gone overseas, and he was with a signal supply outfit. And when I got done with my leadership thing, I got orders to go to that very spot. But I think he was at the front desk there, and there was a WAC major that was in charge of us when I got in, and I think he had asked her to, because it wouldn't. That's more than a coincidence, but anyway, I wound up at the same place. In fact, we did the same job. I was a proofreader, yeah, and so I really didn't do any serious fighting or anything like that. But I put in my 2 years anyway, and then we were at Hanau, Germany for part of the time, and then the Cold War was on, and there was concern we were too close to the Russian border, so they moved the whole outfit to Orléans, France, which is 70 miles south of Paris. Orléans this year was where they had the women's soccer thing, and I hadn't realized that. I was at Orléans. Yeah, I know where that is.
So you got to see Germany and France, and
that's where we were stationed. Yeah, that was 70 miles south of Paris. Orleans. Well, that was where Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. Was it Orleans? Yeah, or Orleans they'd call it here, but Orleans is what they call it over there.
Were there any other countries you made it to during that time?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Went to Italy and Scotland. England, and of course we were there long enough that we did some short trips around. Of course, as you know, the distance isn't as far as it is here in the United States, and we traveled by train most of the time. I had one of the friends there. He was a Jew. He was quite a character, and he bought an old, big, used Mercedes, and we drove it around sightseeing, and he at that time cigarettes were in France were really, we'd buy them for, I think it was 10 cents a cart. It was real cheap, and he black market them in Paris, and I think that's where he made his money.
Really?
He was a character. We went on several vacations with him, and his brother were from New York, and they knew the way around. Us farm kids didn't didn't know the subway system in the whole city, but those two guys, of course, it was nothing to them, and so we traveled quite a little with them, and I always got a kick out of him.
What was the best part about being over there?
Oh, I don't know. you do get used to, as you know, you do get used to it, and it's routine, and we had some good time. We had free time. Of course, I was just doing a desk job, and we had, that's where I got the ping pong playing, and I enjoyed the vacations we had and stuff. And the food was good. Like in Germany, I thought the food was really good. And France had good food too. And like I said, I'd never eaten pasta till I was in Italy, or France. Italy, I guess it was.
Yeah, that would have been quite a treat.
Yeah.
For the first time to eat the pasta.
While he was overseas, I worked at the hospital in Carroll in the office until we got married.
Tell him how much you made.
Well, I worked after school. After my freshman year, I didn't like riding the bus home, and so my folks let me work at the hospital. I had two sisters already working there, one in the lab and one up on the floor where the babies were born, and so I applied, and yes, they'd hire me, and I worked in the kitchen. I got 35 cents an hour.
Wow.
But sometimes they gave me some food.
It was the men's ran that. It was a Catholic
yes.
hospital.
And then when I worked a whole day on Saturdays, and I got a weekend or two off a month, and then I got $3. But that would buy a lot. That's the difference.
Yeah, the prices have gone up so much.
Yes. But they were very good to me, and I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed those I worked with, and so anyway. But then they told me that you know, after I graduated, if I wanted to, there would be a job open in the office for me if I wanted it, because I had taken bookkeeping and typing and those subjects, and so I said yes, because I knew I wouldn't be going on to college, and so that's what I did. So I went right from there, and so I enjoyed it there. There was a lot of work around a lot of nice people, and yeah, I enjoyed my work.
And what was the worst thing overseas, Grandpa?
Well, we were away 2 Christmases. And the second one, we were supposed to have been home. We were in France, of course, and the word was out, and there's a lot of rumors in a place like that. You're thousands of guys, and everybody knows everything, and a lot of the stories wrong. But we were supposed to get home, and then we found out that we were going to be delayed till after Christmas, so that was kind of an upsetting time. But like I say, I didn't see combat or anything, so I didn't have any traumatic experiences really.
Didn't you say the trip across the ocean back and
Oh
forth
yeah,
was...
I was sick. I was sick all the way over and all the way back. And as I remembered, it's about 2 weeks each way.
Ooh, pretty crowded boat.
Oh yeah, as I remember, and I think I'm right on that. We were in down 7 decks, and there was about 4 layers high. You just could slide in under the guy right above you, and of course people were throwing up all over, and so it was a bad deal. They were just trying to get you. That wasn't quite a cruise ship, I'll say.
What was it like when you came back and you guys first saw each other after a year and a half?
That was, I got out at just outside Chicago. I can't remember the name of the camp right now. And my dad and uncle met me. It was at night. We drove back. It was during the day. We drove back, and as I remember it, we got back to the folks about midnight, and I went down. Isn't that right? I drove down and saw her.
Yeah, I think it was late.
It was like 1 o'clock in the morning when I first saw her then.
What do you
That was pretty exciting.
I'm sure. It must have felt kind of surreal after so long apart.
Part of you wonders if you'll still be the same person, or feel the same way. But we had written letters constantly, so I think that made the difference. I do.
I didn't feel she had changed any, really. One thing that would seem strange now, I think, of course, the folks were oriented toward saving money and stuff. I hadn't been home a week, and my dad said, I was just trying to orient myself, and Dad said, "Well, you better be getting a job." So, and I had enough money that I had saved money while I was. I bought a new car that was when I bought that car. I just got out of the Army and I bought that new car, and I had cash for it, and that I had saved, and I wasn't hurting for money then. I bought street clothes. I bought suits and stuff like that. And anyway, so I got a job. I worked as a hired man then that year. Then until we started farming the next year.
And your dad said, "Better not sit on that couch long."
Yeah, looking back on it, the week wasn't all that long.
It was probably quite an adjustment to come back after being in a whole different world for a couple of years.
And the work was hard. I had done a desk job. Well, we had our calisthenics during the week, but I had a desk job, and of course, at that time, everything was physical. I still remember we were shelling corn, and I was just beat. It took me a while to get broke into that because it was work I hadn't done for a long time.
I bet. And it wouldn't have been too long after that you guys got married?
And June 4th.
June 4th. How long after you got back?
Well,
February 20. Well, from February 2nd to June.
Till
Okay,
June,
so
yeah.
only a few months.
I was anxious to get to her.
And then not long after that, you guys started having kids?
Well, it was the next year.
Yeah,
Steve
it was 50.
born-
Steve was born in 56.
See, we were
in
born June
August-
55, and he was August of
yeah,
6,
of 56.
You were married in 55.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. What was it like having your first kid?
That was exciting. That was exciting. I mean, that's a whole new realm of things. I mean, it's just so different, whatever. But yeah, that was very, very neat.
Well, how much was Steve's first hospital? But you can always remember that figure, and I can't remember that.
It was $75 for the doctor and $75 for the hospital. And
Wow.
there was a doctor that assisted, and he charged 10.
Wow.
See, we didn't have any insurance.
Jeez. Things have gone downhill in the healthcare costs department.
But speaking of healthcare, that was one thing I was going to mention earlier. In the line of how medicines have improved, the one big thing that I can remember, I don't know if you had ever heard much about polio, but the polio vaccine came out when our kids were, tiny, and so we were all able to get the polio shot because that was something that really people just got disabled.
Oh, we knew several people
With that,
that did.
we knew, yeah. So that was
like where they got it at 8 or 10 years old. They'd have a leg that never grew after that, and they'd be a cripple or iron lung. They wound up with ruined lungs where they were totally disabled. There was a serious disease back. Well, you can easily look online and see that and find that out about iron lungs or anything. Yeah, we had a neighbor that had a paper right north of where Warren lives now that had polio and when he was 10, and the one leg was just what it was when he was 10.
Wow. Yeah, that's been a major change. A lot of diseases that used to, a lot more kids used to die real young and stuff. Yeah. So going back to the day Steve was born, what did you feel when you held him in your arms for the first time and looked into his eyes?
Well, it's hard to believe because you think, here's this perfect baby with 5 fingers or 10 fingers and 10 toes and everything, they're perfect, and I mean it's just it's almost something you can't explain.
Feels like a miracle.
It does feel like a miracle.
Yeah, it's amazing that we can bring new life into the world.
Yes, it
That's
is.
Quite a superpower.
And it's such a happy thing, a happy time, for, everybody comes in to congratulate you, or even at the hospital, people, nurses or whatever, everybody that comes in, and I even remember the priest from Spencer even came in, even though we were from Everly, but I mean, visited and stuff, and it's not like if you're there because of a sickness or something, you know. So yeah, it was a very joyful time.
Yeah, and you guys ended up having 5 kids.
Right.
And what was the most unexpected thing about being parents?
You had 2 miscarriages too, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, but I didn't know if I was going to mention that.
Oh.
But I don't know whether, did you think the kids were more,
I don't know. I
took
guess,
more discipline than what you thought, or?
I think the teenage years are hard for the kid and hard for the parents both. I really do. I was a little rebellious when I was a teenager, so I understood their rebellion as far as that goes. But there's a lot of good times during that time too, as far as that goes. But there were times when the kids kind of hated your guts, but they all like grew it, and so I guess that was the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I really enjoyed them growing up, and whatever.
I say we had a lot of good times.
Yeah, and interested in all their things, and most of them were, you know, quite active in things, and so it was fun going to following their things, and I enjoyed that.
Did it feel like you just gained a whole lot more responsibility when you started
absolutely, yeah, it definitely.
You had to grow up a bit more.
Yes, and you're a little more tied down, and or if you know, when they got older or a little older, to take 2 or 3 with you to, maybe if you had to go shopping or get groceries or something, it's definitely was a chore. There was no doubt about it.
Something that was quite a little different back then, it was pretty typical really, was the wife, their families were bigger, and the wife didn't work away from the home, and so I admit, she did most of the raising the kids, and I was trying to make a living, and so a lot of that stuff she had more to do with than I did as far as that goes. But of course Steve was interested in farming from the time he was pretty young, and so he was out there. Bry would come out if he had to, but he didn't want to.
Any stories come to mind from the time when the kids were younger? Maybe any family vacations or?
Oh yeah, we took a lot of family vacations.
Yeah, I think we tried to take every year. Well, I guess we started when Bren was just she was
around
just,
2 or so.
She was about 2, and
2 or 3.
the Black Hills was our first vacation with them, and then we went to Yellowstone and Glacier and different. Tried to go someplace with them every year. Up into Minnesota one year, and out to the Dells one year, as they were growing up, of course. But and one year we took. We asked my folks if they'd like to. We were going out to Colorado, I guess it was, and Mom and Dad were living in Lake City, and Steve had just got his license, and so they were glad to go. So of course our kids all wanted to ride with Grandpa and Grandma at first because they were Grandpa and Grandma, but then Steve drove their car, and we had a nice trip really. And a strange, lucky thing happened really. Steve. Ford, we didn't know about it at the time, but Ford had a problem with it where they would kick out of reverse if you put it in reverse or in park. And we got out of the car. It was in the mountains, and Dad was in the back seat. Steve got out. Dad stayed in the car. The car started to roll, and my dad was short and heavy set, but he got over the back seat of the front seat. And got the dang car stopped, or otherwise, yeah, that was so it could have been a tragedy, and so that was one dang lucky thing that happened. And then afterwards, Ford there was a problem. I mean, they got sued over fatalities on that for the car would jump out of park. But then I remember on the way home, Mom never could stand heat. Then on the way home, coming through Nebraska, where the air conditioner went out of their car, and I remember Mom just about had a fit. Till I could get home.
It's cool that you guys went to different national parks and went to different
Yeah, we did do quite a bit of
nature
visiting.
areas. I remember in all the photos I've seen from your slides, Grandpa, that Grandma's fashion in those days was impeccable.
Don't know about that, but people dressed up a little more now than what we're now. You would just probably go with a pair of shorts or capris or something on, real casual, and people were just a little bit dressed a little different those days, it seems like.
You seem to like having some kind of flashy,
interesting I did like. I always did enjoy clothes. I always thought it'd be fun to work in a clothing store and sell clothes, but I never did.
You guys were both snappy dressers, I think. Based on
I don't know about that.
Well, and what's so strange is girls I know they've seen pictures of. For church, they all had their church dress and coat, or if it was a spring coat, or for Easter with little white gloves, and so what they used to do in little hats, and they had all this, and everybody did this. And now, things are so casual that there are some little girls that you'll see in a pretty little dresses and stuff, but not as carried as far as we did. We just seemed like everybody. I mean, if you went to church, you had to be in your Sunday best. And it's just kind of how things are so different now. And I'm not saying it's all wrong.
Yeah, it's just changed a lot.
It's just a change.
Yeah, you guys have really lived through a time of one of the times of greatest change in recorded human history, I'd say.
Yeah.
So it's been, so much has happened. Yeah. What was the hardest thing about raising kids or during those years?
Actually, I was going to say it always bothered me when any one of them got married. Not that that's a happy, but also a sad occasion, because they're not yours anymore. I mean, it's you're happy for them. It isn't that you'd want it to be any different. That's the way you want it to be, but yet it's a kind of a sad, emotional day.
But luckily we never had any traumatic things happen. We've had our spats and one thing and another, but our kids were basically pretty good kids, and I think they would say they had a good childhood. I don't know that for sure. You probably know better than I do, but I think that they would say they had a good childhood.
And when Steve went off to college, which was the first one, and he was young anyway, and because his birthday was in August and started right to school, so I think he was graduated at 17, and he left that summer rather than wait till fall so he could come home in the fall to help his dad with the harvest. And so he seemed so young to take off for college. And he and Al McCarty packed their suitcases, and that's all they took in his little Vega, and away they went. It was almost too much. It took me a while to get over that, but then you kind of get clued into them as the next one leaves and whatever, and you kind of get used to it. But the first time, it's like their first day of school, kind of like it's just a funny feeling.
You have to start letting go.
That's right. That's right. To let go. That's something you have to learn, and you wouldn't want it to be any different. That's the crazy part about it.
Yeah, have to let them become their own person.
That's right.
And live their own life.
That's right. And we're happy to have everybody seem to be pretty happy and on their own families and stuff, and so I feel we're blessed.
Well, naturally teenagers are going to want to do more than the folks want them to do. Your mother included. She would admit that.
I've heard a couple stories. Yeah, and then it wouldn't have been too long after that after Steve left for college that the kids started getting married, as you said, and then having kids, and then grandkids started appearing.
Right.
What was it? What was it like to start having grandkids?
Well, that was exciting. Yes, it was. Kim was the first one married. She was married younger, right out of high school. And so, yes, that was very exciting. I enjoyed every bit of that. And
Well, we've been lucky over the years, as you know. We're awfully close here that we've had kids and grandkids here, as you certainly were, and many others were. Remember, you used to come here and help me dig potatoes and a few things. And
yeah, do you still remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you?
Yeah.
Riding almost everybody had to ride my lawnmower a little bit, and one thing and another. So those were good times, no question.
Yeah, we enjoyed every one of the grandchildren as they grew up, and of course, everybody's getting out on their own, doing their thing now, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But we just still get to see everybody, even the great grandchildren. If Kim has her grandchildren there, somehow they'll get in here, or Jolene will bring in their grandchildren, so we get a chance to see them. So, and then a lot of them were at the 4th of July, so we get to see those, and as many as can come for Christmas. So those gatherings, that's what it's all about.
So we've been pretty lucky.
Yeah, we have been. Most people don't have everyone close like we do.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. With the families really pretty
We are.
concentrated,
We
at
are.
least around northwest Iowa and this couple surrounding states. And yeah, I suppose I'm the one that tends to be the farthest away.
Well, we wind
time.
up seeing you too.
Yeah. Well, Jake is clear out, and he was in New York, and then I believe he was in Connecticut for a while this summer, and so he's away now too.
Yeah, it's great that it's never been easier to travel across the world quickly. So it's great that I can still make it back a month or two a year and visit and stuff.
Well, and everybody of our grandchildren, like Nathan, I know they send him to Vietnam a few different times in his job, and I think Kim mentioned someplace else he's going soon. And Alex was he in where was he, in Chicago with with his job? I mean, there's lots more of that than you ever would have heard of years back, where companies even are sending them to different places like that. So this is beginning to be more common.
Yeah, I remember coming over here as a kid and always, I'll never forget Grandma's spaghetti and meatballs being the thing that we always wanted to eat.
The thing Grandma always had on hand.
Yeah, and I remember playing out back and digging stuff up out of the garden, and always, of course, on the holidays, all of us grandkids wanted to go down in the basement and play foosball and ping pong and pool.
Yeah, I was hoping you guys had some good memories of that when you would play down there with those games. And
oh yeah, we loved it down there. That was good. And I remember getting old enough to start playing Grandpa in ping pong and experiencing his formidable ping pong skills and the dark one, which was the name of a particular shot that he would pull out that was very difficult to return. And I remember playing games over here as a kid with Grandma. I remember Anna always wanted to play you in memory or something like
absolutely.
that.
Anytime she came and I said, "What do you want to play?" it was always memory. And I had such a terrible time with that, because about the time that I knew where a few of them were, and I thought, "Hey, I'm good now," Anna would just clean up the whole thing. And because she was enjoying that so much, she just
She took a little too much pleasure in beating up on her poor grandma. In
Oh,
memory.
I really didn't mind. I was just enjoying it. But.
Yeah. What
Yeah,
up?
they were a lot of fun. All of you were, and you were. So it was the Barney book, wasn't it? The Barney book. I don't think you were 2 years old. You could read. You had that book all memorized. You could read that, and maybe you could even read. You could read it word for word, never the wrong word. When you were so young, it was just unbelievable.
What else do you remember doing with the different grandkids when they would come over and visit?
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes we played card games, maybe rummy or something like that, or puzzles, or I'd do different things like that. Lots of times, maybe if their moms were going shopping or something, they'd be here over the noon hour or whatever. So then we would, like I'd be fixing probably spaghetti and meatballs. But yeah, I did just a lot of different things, or went down the basement and played with, if they wanted to play house or something with the toys down there. Just kind of whatever they wanted to do. Some of them liked to dress up. We had old clothes. And of course, when we lived out on the farm, Jason and Lindsay and Kevin were there before they, well, I guess Heather was too, before they moved over to our house and we built in here. But I have really good memories of Jolene and I would send Jason back and forth if she needed an egg or was out of something. He'd come over and get it from me, and if I'd get it. He'd go over and get it from her and bring it to me. So he went back and forth and never ever went out where the machinery or anything was. We could trust him so good. But when Lindsay got about 2 or 3, she was a little more, what do I want to say?
Stubborn.
Well, she was wanting to try more different things, so she'd walk over to our house if something didn't suit her. She'd walk over to our house with the kiddies and whatever. And but the one day we were gone to town or something, and when we came home, she was sitting on the step with the kiddies at our house waiting for us to get home. And I don't know, I suppose Jolene was maybe starting to look for her, they were supposed to be playing outside. And so she wasn't as trustworthy as Jason was. So we found out we had to watch her close. Well, then they were in that little trailer home, so that's why they needed to get out of there. It was just getting too crowded, and that wasn't working too good, so.
And of course, I'll always remember all the holidays over here, all the Christmases and Easters.
We did. There was a
and
time, yeah. I did have all of them for a while until the girls decided they needed to do some of them, and I just have Christmas, and of course then we outgrew that.
Yeah, they're always such a big feast every time.
Oh my, we had everybody brought
have a spread.
Such good food.
We ate well.
Yeah, we did. We certainly did.
Really,
yeah.
I remember Mike, Joe, and I just always piling our plates extremely high.
We wanted everybody to have plenty of food, so
it was a contest to see who could stuff themselves.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Definitely grateful that we had such an abundance of food. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if I should start
Nobody's going to listen to that long.
For supper. Do you have anything else you want to ask us, Jordan?
Yeah,
or
we
would
can
be able to do it after supper. Otherwise, if you still have more, or you can't, you don't want to stop this in the middle of.
We could stop. We could take a break, but maybe it feels to me like we could probably wrap things up in the next 10 minutes or so.
Okay, well then let's do that.
Longer.
We'll just have supper a little bit later. That's a chili made, but I was going to make some cornbread, and I got to heat that up. And
gotcha.
so,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, it seems like we've covered most all of the timeline of you guys' lives. I was gonna ask about what's been the most difficult experience you guys have been through, either individually or together in your lives.
something probably hit me as hard as, well, my sister dying was bad, of course. My brother lost a little baby. How old he was? How old would he have been?
Maybe a year and a half, two,
And,
maybe at the most.
For some reason, that got his wife at this funeral. They couldn't get her to leave the cemetery, and it just really got to me. I just couldn't get that out of my mind. And in a lot of years, we've had a lot of, because there's been, over that many years, there's been a lot of losing your parents and everything else. But that was one that just, I think probably emotionally hit me harder than anything else that I ever had.
I lost a sister at 44, when she was only 44, to cancer, colon cancer. And she left, they had 5 children, and her youngest one, the little girl, was just 10 when she died. That was really sad.
Wow. How do you guys think about it when people pass on and leave this world?
Well, I think they're on to something better, so I'm hoping that someday we're back together or see them, get a chance to see them. I don't,
As I've told you, I am agnostic on that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Jack feels that way, but I feel like.
Smart enough to know I don't know, and honest enough to admit it, I guess. But I don't know.
Yeah. And yeah, what do you think? What's been the most unexpected thing about life in general, about being alive as a person?
I think we were awful lucky to be born in an area like this. You've seen enough of the world to know, and I have too, seen enough of the world to see how bad places can be. We're awful lucky to be in an area like this. When I started out, it was on a poor farm, and looking back on it, I probably should have gone broke and was lucky enough not to. so I consider myself pretty lucky.
Yeah, I think we've had a lot of
we had a lot of good luck. Yeah.
Good luck in our lifetime. With we never had a lot of doctor bills with our children, which could have been severe, and just so many things. We've really been lucky. Our health wise for us, and we had a good upbringing, so we both knew how to work and save our money, to try to get ahead a little bit, and I feel we were fortunate about all those things.
It seems like you guys are both really grateful for all the blessings, and it seems you're good at counting your blessings.
Absolutely, I don't take it for granted. I think we've been very fortunate.
Well, I think anybody, if they're successful and is honest, they'll say you had to have some luck. You had to have the health is the main thing, really. And I didn't carry any hail insurance. I didn't carry any health insurance or anything for years and years and years. So any one of those serious things could have wiped us out, and it didn't. So I consider we're pretty fortunate.
And if you guys were gonna think about general kind of life advice or life wisdom that, let's say, one of your great grandkids is listening to this, what would you generally say to them about living life?
Well, try to do the best you can. You only go around once. Try to enjoy it. When you get to be older, look back at it and not be ashamed of what you did, to the most part. I think we all made mistakes. I've made a few, but for the most part, I can look back and say, I'm content. Here the saint is.
Yeah. Well, I'd absolutely agree with that. I say, do the best you can, but enjoy life. It goes fast. Of course, my advice would be to remember the good Lord on top that's helping you.
Yeah, time is a crazy thing, huh? How
It
it
is.
goes
How
by.
fast it goes.
Yeah. I guess
Just-
I think I can say this when Steve had his 60th. Yeah, it bothered him. He said, "I think about how fast from 40 to I went from 40 to 60," and he said, "When none of I'd be like you, Dad." And I said, "Well, it's not that bad, Steve."
Well, it almost seems like the older you get, the faster time goes.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Yeah, it does seem that way. It seems like, yeah. Well, maybe part of it is that the newness of living kind of makes things more, I don't know, over the years you get caught up in routines and you end up doing a lot of the same things over and over, so maybe that's part of why it goes faster, and the newness, the novelty maybe wears off a bit.
That's probably true. That's probably one of the good reasons.
Yeah, that's one thing when sometimes it feels like traveling almost seems to stretch time back out again, because you everything's new again suddenly. It's almost like you're on another planet when you go to another country, and so you're seeing almost with the eyes of a child again. Everything's new and interesting and fascinating, but yeah, you can also learn to just look at the world that way wherever you are, I think, as well. But yeah, let's see if there was any final question I had here. I don't think so. So yeah, so thank you guys for talking it all over.
I hope it wasn't too long and boring.
Oh no, I don't think so at all. No, I think it
Well,
was
you're
really
welcome.
interesting.
It was really brought us back to thinking about a lot of things. Actually, it was very enjoyable.
I'm glad. Yeah, I really enjoyed it too, and yeah, so.
No, nobody will probably ever want to listen to that.
Are there any final parting words you'd like to?
Is it on or off?
It's on still. So.
Well, we appreciate you thinking about it, coming out to see us and everything, and we're very proud of you, Jordan.
Yes, we are. That was a neat idea, which I wouldn't have thought about, but I've heard it said that that's what we should have done with our parents, but we didn't do it. But we did just kind of visit with them and ask them things.
And I can kind of understand you liking another place and getting used to it, because I remember when I was overseas, I got used to it, and you get a routine somewhat, and so I can understand that.
Yeah, I have a taste for adventure. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
is the
And that's all right. That's
Yeah.
all right, Jordan. And we really appreciate you coming out to see us again before you leave. And
Yeah, absolutely happy to do so. Well, I love you guys.
I love you too.
yeah, well, we love you too. We love all of our grandchildren. It's wonderful to have such nice grandchildren.
Beautiful. Well, on that note, say goodbye for now, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye bye.